Good evening and welcome to today's Dad's Den. I would like to take an opportunity to let my guests introduce themselves to you, starting with Brother Chris.
How's everybody doing? This is Chris Davis, founder of Lionheart and Dads Forward, and super excited to be here with obviously an amazing group of men.
Thank you, thank you. And then next, we're going to go to Brother Mal.
What's going on, everybody? Mal Davis. Just really appreciative to be here. I'm an educator, podcaster, and really just a high believer in mental health and taking care of yourself. So this is a great space to be in. Thank y'all for having me.
And last but not least, we have Brother Adam.
Gentlemen, it's a pleasure to be on this chat with you guys. Say hi to everybody out there that's listening and who might watch it later. My background really is, I'm a new dad. That's kind of the freshest background I have. Just had my first child who was born on New Year's Eve. But I am also a neonatal pediatric specialist in respiratory. I worked in a NICU and on the birth rapid response team for the first 7 to 8 years of my career. Probably attended hundreds of births. Anything you can see, I've pretty much seen when it comes to neonatal health. I have that background, and as an African American male, especially as young as I look, I'm 41, but I look a lot younger. And people treat you how they see you.
Yes.
Dealing with from that aspect and that perspective, I definitely have um, a unique outlook on things. So hopefully I can, share something that helps others.
I'm sure you will. And then I am Clarence B. Izzard, and I work for Jefferson Einstein Hospital, and I run a program called Dad Lab, and I will be serving as your moderator for today. So, fellas, are y'all ready?
Let's get it.
All right, got a
Definitely.
couple questions we just want to talk about. So we want to start off with Chris. So, Chris, what impact do you think men play in this maternal health field and discussion?
From my perspective, it's absolutely critical. Um, as we understand, anatomically and biologically, moms would not be possible without dads, right? So we play a critical role in how this kind of takes shape. But see, for me, as a dad, when I was in college and early, I was a young dad. My oldest son, who's 27 now, was born when I was playing ball in college, man. And in the summertime, I actually had an opportunity to work in an OBGYN, which taught me a lot of things. And as Adam alluded to, I've seen a lot of things that most men don't get a chance to see and better understand. And so when I look at that and I think about men and the role we play in the lives of our significant others, our wives, our girlfriends, as it relates to their pregnancy and that whole process, we play a critical role because we're a different set of eyes. We're an objective set of eyes that get to take a look at, and you can tell the differences in your significant other during that process. And as we further educate ourselves in terms of some of the dynamics, some of the experiences that moms have, we can be the set of eyes that could literally be a game-changing, life-saving voice. Sometimes moms can't see that they are a little bit more lethargic than normal, or they're a little swollen, and that may be due to some a challenge they may be experiencing health wise. And so, a caring set of eyes, a caring, attentive set of eyes, and just engagement is critical. And I think dads and men play a critical role in this space, man, and oftentimes a life-saving role.
I would agree. Thank you. Brother Mal, I got a question for you. It says, for you, what was the process of you getting a doula like, and why did you choose to get a doula for you and your significant other?
Yeah, man. So getting the doula was interesting. It was literally just getting online. I was really fortunate. I stumbled across Coco Life accidentally. I found Alexia first, and then did a little bit of research on her. The church came up, the doula group came up, and so I reached out to her, and she got back to me really, really quickly. And clearly, we stayed locked in since. And Malcolm Jr. is 18 months old, so it's been 2 years now, roughly. That we've been in the process now in the postpartum space. It was interesting, man, because I did it similar to what Chris said. You need another set of eyes, right? And like for me, unlike Adam, unlike Chris, maybe Clarence, unlike yourself, I don't have experience seeing these things. And so most of my research came on Twitter and being like shell shocked, or Reddit being shell shocked, Google shell shocked. And I'm like, I remember Allison was laying next to me, and she's like 6 months in, and I'm reading this chain on Twitter from a OBGYN about like pregnancy, and I was traumatized, bro. And she was sleeping next to me, and I turned and I looked at her, and I was like, what did I get us into? Like it was just this whole process of being lost. And so that led me to saying, okay, not only does she need an extra set of eyes, but she needs someone else that really understands this process. As we all know, women of color, specifically Black women, really don't get listened to and treated well through this process, right? Like my wife had preeclampsia. And so, Chris, when you mentioned like the tightness, that's how we peeped something was going on, right? And so went and got a doula because I'm not stupid. And like doulas have been a part of this process for us long before institutions really cared about us. And so it just made sense to tap back into where we come from. And it was a very spiritual process. And our doula was there when my wife had to get her emergency C-section. I literally cried and prayed with her because it was make or break right then. And so that's why you do it, right? Because that person brings something to this experience that no one else can. And it's a very unique thing. And I think that as men, our partners deserve the best treatment. And that's doulas as well, man. That's people to like really watch their back when, maybe the doctors don't listen and we don't know.
I agree. So, Adam, following up on that and based off of your introduction, what would you say, given some of the maternal disparities in the communities of colors, and what are some of the possible benefits of having a Black doula serving in these Black communities?
Yeah, I mean, the disparity part is sad, but it's something that I guess everyone needs to be aware of, because then you can kind of, I guess, try to overcome that disparity. I mean, one of the best ways is a doula. My wife and I, we got a doula as well. We're members of Enon, and we got recommended to Coco Life as well through our church family, and it was a great experience. I mean, it really was, and I think and just to piggyback off of what the brother just said about just our history and our ancestry and how the community was always something that was leaned upon. So our doula was amazing as well. Thank God, my wife didn't need an emergency C-section, but she definitely played a crucial role. It's great to have another set of eyes. Even with my experience, I can only be in one situation, one perspective, I can't see everything. So it was great to have our doula. I did not get a doulo, and I think I kind of maybe regret that. I didn't really, I heard about it, didn't really explore it much further. But, I think, Chris just said, I think men, we play just as an important role. Nothing is possible without our involvement, and the stronger a leader the man is, I think the stronger the family is going to be. So coming off of that, I think disparities in the Black community is something that we're going to have to deal with when we're dealing with healthcare, unfortunately. And a doula, a doulo, both of those, probably any other kind of eyes that you can have in the situation, in the room. Because sometimes medical professionals, they just need somebody to say they see something for behavior to change. A lot of healthcare now is protocol driven, and there's a reason why, because they do work, but also, biases and just different behaviors can just get us off of protocol. So, any kind of pokes or prods, questions can kind of get people back on the path that they're supposed to be as far as healthcare is concerned, and given the best care. It's just a thing, unfortunately. But I think if you reach out to a doulo, a doula, I think you're going in the right direction. I mean,
We got you. And then you gave me like a layup. It goes right to Chris. Chris said he was an athlete, power forward coming down the lane. I'm tossing it up to you. What
Yeah.
what what drove you to become a doula?
I mean, that's an incredible question. And the cool thing is that I'm from a state that basketball is the main sport, but I actually played receiver in college. So,
So you from
toss it up either
Indiana?
way. I'm scoring touchdowns or I'm ripping the rim down, baby. But that's a great alley oop, man. And I'll tell you why. Part of what Adam was kind of talking about in terms of just the experience that moms and dads have in the hospital setting. My three boys, I watched all of them be born, and educated myself along the way. Again, like I said, I had an early leg up because I spent some time as in working in an OBGYN office, so I got a lot of insight and some a lot of questions answered in that space. But nothing replicates your own child being born and your significant other carrying prayerfully the term. But in my situation, my youngest two sons, she didn't carry the term. It was a troubled pregnancy on both accounts. One was she was on bed rest for a short period of time, and then my youngest son, his mom was on bed rest probably like the last 3 months, and she had a unique situation where she had a sequela, so she had to kind of. There were a lot of things they were doing, introducing magnesium into the so they can slow down and prevent contractions that would have him being born early, and there was an emergency C-section that we had to undergo for his during his birth, and so that whole process and the NICU experience, it gave me a great deal of insight. But then what's interesting is that from an experiential standpoint, by son number 3, I was pretty well versed on all the things to be looking for, all the things to be looking at, all the right questions to ask. And what I found is that to the hospital personnel, I was invisible. Um, and so because I'm aggressive, this is my significant other, this is my son being born. I need to speak up. So here's what I had to make sure that my presence was known, and literally often bedside receiving information. All focus was on mom, and I had to say, "Hey, listen, hey, I'm right here. If you wouldn't mind addressing me as well, and just kind of making sure that there are two people, there are literally two human beings in the room. You got to address both. I'm just out of respect, and I think in a lot of ways, just being able to advocate for ourselves as men, and then it puts us in a position to advocate for our significant others, for the moms, right? From a maternal standpoint, and I think it's also important to kind of look at as we're starting now to pay more attention to the mental health dynamic of dads,
Yes.
right? And I've said this in a number of different settings that a lot of the celebratory energy is usually directed toward mom and baby, and rightly so. But there's no celebratory dynamic that is focused on the dad, and he is just as excited about this new bundle of joy being welcomed into the world. But no one's celebrating dad. No one's asking that, hey, how are you? How are you emotionally? How are you working through the process? How is this happening for you? Especially if there's some challenges during the pregnancy. How are you feeling about this? Right. And so I think that becoming a doula was almost a given. I said, man, I have to take to some of these lived experiences and be able to advocate for dads who may not even know the right questions to ask, or may not know that it's okay to say, hey, as the baby's born, part of the bonding process is skin to skin. Hey, babe, can you pump some milk so I can get some skin to skin time with baby? Because baby's going to get used to my scent too. Also, I'm 9 months behind. Y'all been bonding for about 8 to 9 months. I'm 9 months behind. I got some catching up to do. So let me burp the baby, let me feed the baby, let me bathe the baby, let me do, you know what I mean? And I think a lot of times, man, just helping to advocate for dads in that space, advocate for healthy relationships in that space, so that both people are considerate of one another and one another's emotions, one another's, experiences, is just the reason why I had to do it. I had to
I
do it.
appreciate that. And if I can, I think one you jumped. All of y'all been saying some amazing stuff, but one of the things I just want to jump in. A lot of times with men, our assertiveness comes off as aggression. So, like you said, you had to do it. You had to speak up. You wasn't being recognized. So your voice, your presence can come off as aggression. And then if it comes off that, then if people aren't familiar with you, with men of color, of size or voice, then they can project and do things differently. And that's one of the things that I loved you kept on talking about advocating. So it's advocating through, being assertive. And part of that assertiveness also can include having birth plans with flexible goals, meaning that y'all went through this, y'all talked about it, y'all have a birthing team, y'all have a plan with the understanding. The main goal of that plan is you, the baby, the mom, to be able to go home safe. If something have to change from a natural birth to a C-section, if that's going to be in the best interest, that if y'all did that whole brain thing, benefits, risks, alternatives, what's your intuition telling you, and then know that you can say no, never, or not right now. If you do those things, and again, that's some of the tools that we can help and teach our dads, so that they can feel empowered. And it's very, very important that men, dads are recognized through this process. One of the things with Dadland we talk about is, as you say, a mom say, I'm pregnant. Oh, it's the celebratory part. But where's with the dad? Dads, we become dads when the pregnancy is said, but often we're not seen and or included in this process until the birth. So as you said, Chris, then you behind because mom's been getting this the whole time. Nobody not coming up and rubbing your stomach and let me get you that cake you like and all that stuff. They're not doing that to you, but they doing it to them. So Miles, listening to all of that, I hope Chris didn't scare you away. What would you consider being trained as a doula? And if so, why or why not? And then how do you think, if you decide to get trained, how do you think you can help benefit some other people and benefit our community or even, your wife in the future?
Yeah, I would think about it. When I saw the question initially, like I said, it wasn't something that was on my mind. But hearing Chris talk about his experience, hearing Adam describe his as well, in a little bit different of a space and environment, it's something I think that it is important. And Chris mentioned the lived experience part, right? Like since Allison went through her experience, I became a huge advocate for maternal health, but also paternal mental health, like Chris was talking about, right? Like there's a lot of things that go into being a healthy father, being a good present partner, and a lot of that is your mental health, right? Like you're only as strong as your mind. And so for me, I think that it's important for other Black fathers to see Black men in this maternal space that can help give them information and really guide them forward. I was fortunate to just have a lot of dope people in my circle, but none of them really could speak to the intricacies of pregnancy, right? And like because my wife's situation was unique, as all births are, I think that having formalized training as a doula would be dope. I'm 38, so I'm still really in the midst of a lot of what I want to accomplish from a career standpoint. But I'm already thinking about when it's time to quote unquote retire. Like my dedication to the people never ceases, right? Like it never ends. And so being a doula and being able to, for the back part of my life, be able to dedicate myself to this space more wholly and more holistically. Yeah, that sounds cool to me, man. Like it ties into what I care about, which is providing just really amazing experiences for people through arguably the most important moment in your life, right? Like I really underestimated what birth was. I had no idea. I had no idea the toughness that it takes as a woman or as a birthing person to go through that experience, yo. And then to see my wife pivot at the last minute and make the decision that wasn't necessarily best for her, but was best for our child. Um, Life altering. So, but not everybody could come out of that. I'm in a men's mental health group. I do my therapy. I take my medication. So, I'm in a space where I'm managing those things. And even as I manage them, the levee's broke. So for people that don't even spend the time, I think that they need to see or hear that there are people that had similar experiences that then turned around and became a doula themselves, to be able to continue to put the work in for the community. So absolutely would think about it. I don't know if I'll do it, but certainly think about it for sure.
Well, so as Chris and I are on our recruitment, to strengthen, improve, expand the brotherhood, we got your number. We know how to get in
Yeah,
contact with you.
y'all got me.
Yeah.
Hit me up, man. We'll talk about it.
For those who don't know, but a doula, female, men, birth workers. It's non-medical, but we are a support. We are an advocate. We could be perinatal, so that's before. We could do labor and delivery support, and on that post. That post is so important. Brother Chris talked about some of those post things, and it's all been discussed. And we're going to get to Brother Adam to share his background. But the posts, the things, if they are nursing, and as you say, your lady, her likes and her dislikes. What can you do to ease that process? And then nursing takes so much out of them. So if you say, okay, babe, after you finish nursing, I got the baby. You do what you need to do, take your time. And then as you said, bro, that's your skin to skin time. Then you calm, you change, you put it to bed. That 15, 20 minutes that she get of her own time is significant in this process, as you talked about, Brother Mal, for just mental wellness, because you go from being one person to two people, you go to being in a space that I'm no longer the most important thing. I can't do anything without thinking about what's in the best interest of the child. So anytime that dads can help moms have that space in place, it's a great thing. So to you, Brother Adam, one of the things that, going on with this conversation, feeding in, and others could jump in. The question that I just had, please explain what was your role that you played in your wife's maternal journey, and what did you do to support her during this time?
Okay. So, as far as my wife supporting her, I don't know. I did a lot of the shopping, a lot of the, I picked up a lot of the stuff that in the house that, she couldn't do anymore, as
Exactly.
she, had a hard time bending over, and the balance kind of got off as she got bigger into her pregnancy. I had to take on more responsibility, and it's one of those things where you could see that she couldn't do it, so it was just like it's got to be taken care of. You got to step up for each other. That's a partnership in general, but of course, as parents, that's a skill that's going to come in handy. Dealing with children. So, that was that. And then as going to classes with her, we looked at the lactation consultant, and we went to that together. So it was kind of very support role, um, any kind of equipment she needed, as far as her pumping and parts and all that. Once we had the baby, try to help find that and pick it up, or open the packages that were coming, receive them. It was just a lot. So, it really is a team, and it makes things much better because, it's a lot for the woman, obviously. And just like Chris was saying, I'm sure Mal, will say the same thing as far as seeing your wife or loved one, partner, whatever, go through this birthing process. If you love them, there's no way you don't, kind of cry and go through it yourself. Watching them, it's like watching somebody get tortured. It's, so seeing somebody that you care about, that's it's hard. So you just kind of be there to fill in every gap, and that you can, and it makes a big difference. But it's still a wild experience, life changing. And mental health plays a huge. Mal, saying that, it's there's no way to really overstate that, how big mental health is going to play in that role, and how effective of a partner you can be, but then also how well you make it through it yourself.
Yeah.
So Yeah, that was the way I was supportive. Hopefully, I was in other ways too. Emotionally, I tried to be, but I can't really feel the way she's feeling. She's got all kinds of hormone going through her and changes that I'm not going through per se. So I'm going through them quasi through her, but
Mhm.
but I'm not feeling them. So it's an interesting thing, but it does bond you once you go through it. It's one of those things where you make it through there, you're definitely closer. Um,
I don't know. Adam, you doing this little smile gonna get you in trouble later, bro. I don't know, man. You said talking about you got bigger. You might
I
have to
caught that
check.
one too. It's just
I,
the language right now.
I,
But I'm gonna tell you something that I think is really, really dope, man. And I think we need to like zoom in. In terms of you mentioned the fact that you cried, man. I'll admit, I cried at all of my children's births, man. It was a spiritual moment. Like the moment that a child is introduced to the world, man, it's like the time stops. Something happens. And if you've ever had a scenario where you had to wait for your baby to cry, yeah, you feeling every bit of that emotion, man. And I think it's important to make sure that the dads understand that it's okay. You know what I mean? Like, please feel free to be and experience the emotion of the moment because, a lot of times, man, because the culture suggests that we should not, we shouldn't feel, right? And I think it's important to be fully present in that moment because you don't get it's a once in a lifetime experience. Your baby's only born one time. I think it's important to be fully present and soak that in because it's gonna be nourishing for you for years to come. And I think it's really
Yeah.
important, like you said, in terms of just the way that you engage, with your wife or your significant other as they're giving birth, man. That process, just as the baby's growing, as they're moving, as they're kicking, those kinds of things. Man, I was the dad that was like talking to the belly as I'm rubbing cocoa butter because I know she don't want no stretch marks, and so I'm trying to, you know what I mean, 2 or 3
like
times a day. But it's bonding. She's
yeah.
looking at you, she's feeling all warm and fuzzy. Oh my God, he's so, you know what I mean. And you just like, hey, you know what I mean. And I'm bonding. And I'll tell you this, and the reason why it was so important that I did this, and I always press this with the dads that I work with, is that when my oldest son was born, man. He came out of the womb. He was kind of whimpering a little bit. They take him to the table to heat him up, get him cleaned up, stuff out his nose, mouth, and he's kind of taking his breath. He was whimpering a little bit, and I said, "Hey, big guy, everything's gonna be okay." He stopped whimpering, turned his head, opened his eyes, and looked at me.
Yes.
You could have bought me for a pin. I could have melted on the floor, right? I mean, and for me, and I remind my son of this all the time. I said, "Dude, you had me at hello with that."
Mhm.
When you turned and looked at me, but I know that was important because he recognized my voice. The only reason he recognized my voice is because I was so consistently talking to him. And I think that we got to be, engaged and present, and in a way that it's actually two birds with one stone, because Mama's getting some love, right? And God forbid if her love language is a physical touch. I mean, the making sure the belly's nice and oiled up, doc. But then you talking to your child, man, and that part is absolutely critical, I think.
Right. So
I
you
just
said
wanted to, sorry,
for
Clarence, you mind
future.
if I jump in real quick?
No, definitely jump in.
Because you mentioned the crying part. So I also want to normalize crying after the baby, bro. Like it was a number of times I cried in the house with MJ as a newborn, right? First we was at the NICU, so we had 5 weeks there, and I cried damn near every night watching him on camera because he's not in the house. Then he gets to the house and I'm crying because he at the house now. And I don't know what I'm supposed to do at the house with
Come
him.
on, bro.
And so, I remember one day sitting on the front porch with my wife, Allison, and I'm talking to her and I'm just crying, bro. And I'm like, I feel like an inadequate father. Like, I just don't know what I'm doing. And, she consoled me and she kept it real. She was like, yo, you're doing everything you're supposed to. Like, we are brand new to this, so we don't know. And I appreciate her for that. But, I think that the transparency and vulnerability around feeling is something that we have to get back to, right? That like we have normalized ego and being men, and what comes with being a man is being stoic, right? And like stoicism, after a while, is to your detriment, bro, especially when it comes to your children. I think that it's important that we model for them what it is to feel, especially if you have young Black boys, because otherwise, where they gonna learn it from, right? Like what they're being taught is to be very cold and calculated to the world. Nah, man, I want my son to feel 100%. And so I just wanted to tap in with that. Like the crying doesn't stop right when that baby is born. I think we all can experience that. I think the quiet part that needs to be said out loud is how you did it at the house too, right? That how you do it when they're 2 years old and they've been pissing you off all day long, and you just went up to the room, you punched the pillow once, and a couple tears came down because this was a hell of a day, right?
Yeah.
But like I think that we got to be honest about these things, because when we're not, then dads feel isolated and alone and like I'm the different one. No, bro, you're not. People just not talking about it, right? Like that's the thing. And so why I find spaces like this to be so important, and why I appreciate brothers like you, it takes courage to speak about these things and be transparent, because this is the quiet part. So, I appreciate y'all boys, man.
Now, I appreciate you. I have a question for Adam, but I want to ask this since we're being transparent. I feel like we bond this well. A question that's not asked, and in Dad Lab, it was asked once, and I saw the guy look back. So this is the question I have for all y'all. How many times tries did it take to cut the umbilical cord? Have y'all ever been asked that question?
No.
Nah, that's a new one.
This is what you're talking about, Miles.
Hey man, what kind of scissors they use? Like I don't, you know what I'm saying?
But this is the conversation that when you talk about this safe space and for dads to have, because when Miles talked about you could feel inadequate. Now, y'all, nobody ain't jump out and say, "Oh, I did Miles on the first time," because everybody waiting for what the other brother going to say, because you don't want to be like, "No, it took me 3 times." They like that. But these are the conversations that we need to have. Because where you going to have this conversation at?
I feel like
why you getting your head twisted up? You're going to turn back. How long will it take? Why you getting shaped up? Why you when you getting that shirt? Somebody getting fitted for one of them dad dens? How long did it take for you to cut? We don't have those conversations. So these are the opportunities in settings like this to have some of these conversations, because it's so needed. So this question I kind of got like for everybody in this whole space, and the thing that Coco Life and then Mom's Maternal Outcomes Matters, they talked about. It says doulas have such a positive impact. If you look at all the studies, and like you, Chris, and like you, Adam, and Mal, as I got into this, I became a student of it. I have a background in education, a master's in education, but I had a life-changing experience that had me say, hey, I feel like this is where God wants me to be. And Malcolm, you talked about something, talk about egos. My old head, Patrick, Akbar, told me egos stand for edging God out. So we got to stay away from the egos and keep God. The other thing that you talked about, so passionate about, is this process that you're going to have your ups and your downs in this. But with that, because doulas play such a large impact with Blacks, Indigenous people, people of color, in maternal outcomes, how can we bridge this gap between doulas, and hospital staff, nurses, doctors, to better serve our community of color and reduce this disparity? Because the disparity is poor maternal outcomes that sometimes cause fatalities. And so, we're being nice with disparities, but the numbers don't lie. It's 2 to 3 times more likely that this will happen to a person of color than it will a non-person of color. And the crazy part about it is you could be as educated as you want to be. You can have as much money as you want to. You've seen this happen to Serena Williams. You've seen things happen like this to Beyonce. You see these things happen, and you're like, yo, I know they got money, and they had Senior Sinai Hospital, supposed to be the best hospital in the country. How is this happening to them? And then what happens to me? So what do y'all think we can do as men, as a community, to help bridge these gaps and try to improve this process so that our women, our children will have better outcomes for life? So we can start with you, Adam. We can go around if you don't mind.
Oh man, it's really hard as far as like a solid answer onto how to affect change in institutions. besides advocation, I mean, like, that's all you have is advocating and having, people who look. The best healthcare you're ever going to get is when you have your sister's a nurse and she's sitting at the bedside, visiting you and asking the doctor questions as to your care. Like, that's, you know, I've seen it with my own eyes. The people who have people advocating for them are going to get better treatment, and that's a shame, but it's just true. It's sad, but it's true. And the more that person knows about healthcare, the more empowered that person is to help affect you getting better care by advocating for you. But outside of that, you're not going to change these institutions. They have to change themselves. Which is wild to me, because we supposedly had a racial reckoning 3 years ago. But when you look, there hasn't really been a change in the outcomes and of these healthcare disparities. They're the same, or worse. So really, we have to advocate, to these institutions to actually make changes in policy. Like, they should have protocols for Black moms. I mean, whereas there's things they have to do, when it's a Black mom, because obviously the outcomes are worse. Yeah, I don't understand why they haven't enacted things like that, to where, uh, you know, we know this is a population that we mess up on. So check these boxes and make sure you're doing these things when it comes, to these clients. That's how I feel. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take, like, these institutions getting serious about making a change in the care they're given to poor and Black communities. That's the only thing that's going to make a change.
I agree. So we'll go to you, Brother Chris or Brother Malcolm. Y'all have some y'all want to share?
Yeah, I think I'm have to piggyback on what Adam shared. I think in a lot of ways, and I'm gonna broaden the scope. Right, I think that people of color need to advocate for their healthcare. Period. I mean, especially when you zoom in on this particular space, there's some cultural competency that is just not there in a lot of these a lot of these caregivers and these professionals. Man, they have the dynamics of the protocols, as Adam alluded to, but some of the cultural dynamics are slightly different. When you're advocating for your care, I'll just take this for instance. For African Americans, high blood pressure is different than it is for an Asian American or a Caucasian American, or an American of a different cultural background. And so, the numbers are different. What may be high blood pressure for you may not be high blood pressure for somebody else. And so you have different baselines, right? So some people have low, they have low pressure, but that's normal for them. Some people kind of register a little higher on the scale, and that's normal for them. That's a baseline for them. And so just understanding some of those dynamics and being able to just kind of further educate yourself. But I think in a lot of ways, it's a broader conversation for sure, especially with African American moms and the rate at which our moms are not surviving the birthing process, or are succumbing, to some health challenges and acute crises after the baby's born. Right. And I think that what we can do from an advocacy standpoint is not only just equip dads and equip moms and advocate for moms, but then for the broader community, so that we can to do that for one another. I think that just the more we get the word out, the more saturation happens. And that's, I know it's an uphill battle, right? But I think that over time, we can get the word in all the right places, where at least somebody who knows something you can ask a question to, right? As people who watch this this conversation, they'll be able to kind of get in contact with us. Hey, we're all available. If you have a question, please reach out and connect with us, and we'd be more than willing to share anything that we have learned, either by education or by lived experience, to kind of help you advocate, for a more healthy birthing experience.
Yeah. Just wanted to piggyback Adam and Chris. Y'all had all the notes here, but just wanted to highlight a couple things. Adam, you mentioned policy, right? And so as I've gotten deeper into education, I realized the importance of like policy in that space, but really across the board. And policy comes from situations like this where we create large swaths of people that can advocate on the behalf of others, that can speak up on the experiences of people that are usually silenced or just not listened to, right? Like we are very much invisible in these spaces. And so policy is inevitable, right? That's the only way that things ever change. Adam said it pretty succinctly. Like these institutions don't want to change. I remember I saw these statistics a couple of years ago that said the vast majority of students in medical school now still believe that Black women and Black people in general had a higher tolerance for pain. And so, these things are still being taught while they've already been disrupted in that space. Like people are still learning these things. And so, again, you can't really change an institution when they still reinforce things that they know not to be true. I think that it comes down to a very sort of individualized experience, right? That like, Chris, you mentioned being able to advocate and speak up on behalf of your partner when you're actually in the hospital during the birthing process, or you become a doula, or you're Adam and you're at work and you're able to speak up on the behalf of the BIPOC population. I think that that's sort of where the rubber hits the road for us, right? That the expectation in maternal health is that women carry the load. I think that at this point, we know that that can't be true. And for Black women specifically, it's not sustainable. They can't carry that, plus carry the household, plus carry a job, plus be a mom. But it's too many things, bro, right? Like you got a division of labor is a real thing here. And so when I could pick up the baton and do some of the running for Allison, I'm going to do it every single time because I feel as though it's mandatory. She gave me the greatest gift that a person could ever give. And so in return, she gets my like lifelong allegiance. And I'm going to step into these spaces and advocate not just for her, but for all birth parents, period. Because again, if we're not using our own lived experiences and like our know-how and intuition to be able to help people get better, what are we here for? And so that's kind of like my approach to life in general is anything I have, I want to give. Because if I have it, it was meant to give, right? Like God gave it to me to be able to share that blessing. So it's just a great experience. Thank you to y'all, man, for pouring into me and really just giving me some things to think about in regards to like how I can become even more of an advocate in this space. Because I thought I was doing pretty good. And then I heard people talking about being doulas and seeing hundreds of births. And I'm like, oh, I got a little ways to go, bro. But so I appreciate y'all, man. And thank you for just, again, being open and honest in this conversation.
No, I appreciate all of y'all. And we have a few minutes left. But one of the things I do want to talk on, not promoting any TV shows, but Amsterdam, New Amsterdam, season 3, episode 8 is called The Catch. And it's something that's not talked about a lot because it's too real. They talked about those disparities in the health field and healthcare when it talks about pregnancies. To get out opportunity, if it's regular, I don't know, whatever streaming mechanism. Season 3, episode 8, The Catch is a wonderful, wonderful thing that talks about this. It talks about exactly what we're talking about. That if I'm this type of person, they have, and then Adam, you can help me with the terminology. It's not BMI, but whatever the index things are, we're going to go this route. But if you are a woman of color, same age, we could have went to the same college, live on the same block, the whole nine. It's going to be a different way. And there's one particular scene, the woman of color, Black woman, wanted to have a natural birth. They're saying she couldn't because of age and things like that. And they ready to force her to the point that she was going to leave the hospital. And the doctor says, wait a minute, stop. He said, what would happen if she was a Caucasian, a white woman? They said, well, we would probably let it go. He said, well, put it in the system as if she is. So they looked at him because, technically you can't do that. But just by saying her race was different, the process is allowed to go on. But because she's Black, it wouldn't. That's where we talk about some of these disparities. And so for me, I wrote down PSE. So it's policy, systems, and environment. And then is where are we at in this road? So right now we're doing some environmental things, but then there need to be these systematic changes. But then just as you just said, Mom, and if you're reading and Adam, if they're still teaching this, then that's at a bigger level because they're coming in with this I am a doctor, ism. I ain't gonna say the God thing, ism, and so therefore, it must be right. And what they're saying can't be right because they can't know more than I do. And so those are some of the things. But I know before we leave, we did have this one last one, and then we'll get to make sure we get everybody information. So, how do you envision using your role and your talents and your experience in this space? So, we at the Dad Den, we're talking about Black Maternal Health. We're talking about the third annual Black Maternal Health Summit and Expo that will be taking place this Saturday at Enon Church. So, how do you vision, not just for this space or this time, but throughout? How do you envision utilizing your talents in this space? So we can start with whomever.
Well, I'll jump in real quick. I think, continuing the work that I'm already, I've already kind of embarked on in terms of being a doula, and then some of what's happening on this call, on this conversation where we're recruiting some guys who have experience, who have lived experience, because that's the most important thing, right? People can connect with something you actually went through. I can tell you what it's like from the inside of this experience, and I can connect with you. A lot of times people, I'm not just talking about something I heard, right? I talk about something I know, and I can walk with you in a more meaningful and organic and authentic way if I tell you about something that was my real life lived experience, or somebody that I'm really close to, a loved one or a close friend, same thing, right? And so I think, being authentic, I think is showing up, right, as our true selves is the most powerful thing that we can do. And to be able to recruit other folks who have experiences similar to these and just let the ripple effect do what the ripple effect does. I think groundswell is always more impactful. It's about people power, and we recruit by connected lived experiences and realize that we're not the only ones. I mean, when you realize that it really is a community, it's a community of dads, right, that have various experiences, and we're all linked because we are being able to welcome our children into the world during the pregnancy and then, of course, the post experiences. So just being able to tell our stories, create platforms and opportunities to tell these stories, and then being able to stay connected and being able to walk with other men as they navigate fatherhood from conception to birth and beyond.
Gotcha. Brother Mal, what do you want to share?
Yeah, man, real quick. Just this is incredible, right? That like it's important to continue to just speak up. I think that's the most important thing. Like that's the thing I'm carrying away here. That's what I'm going to continue to do. Chris and Clarence, I would love to connect with you all just to talk more about like, again, for me, I guess the policy piece, because I think that there's more organizing that needs to be done, especially amongst us to get out and be vocal. A lot of times when you see people picketing and marching for these sorts of things or really advocating for these sorts of things as women. And again, that makes sense. But like, where are we? We're supposed to be the vanguard, right? And so we're supposed to show up and be the front line. Because as men, there is a thing where people hear us, right? Maybe not in this space of maternal health, but outside of this space, we carry much more weight than our female counterparts do in a lot of instances. So, yeah, man, just keep doing this is my plan. And as I continue to advance as a father and better understand my own paternal instincts and how I can help folks lean into those spaces where the opportunities present themselves like they did today.
Appreciate that. And Brother Mal, didn't we meet before at the summit? And you got
Yeah,
that
we
dad
met
lab
last
bag?
year. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You got to promote the merch, that dad lab bag. And Brother Adam, how are you? What's your thoughts on this?
Oh, well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel like I could give more. I mean, I actually, got out of, I still have my credentials, but I stopped doing NICU and all that kind of stuff a couple of years ago, right after the pandemic stopped. So, although I'm not in that exact space anymore, I think, just being able to share my experiences, and I've had more opportunity to do that, especially becoming a father myself, and definitely passing on whatever knowledge I can to empower other dads, especially dads of color. I definitely love doing that, and I'm going to look for opportunities to do that more.
Well, I think we should get some young men together, because my next question was for you, Brother Adam. in that space, how many times did you have experience of another male of color being in that NICU space with you?
Now, so being in the NICU space, like on the same team, or just
In that space, period,
as a
because I think that's a space that maybe we don't think about as men, and then maybe we should connect with some young men to say, hey, this might be an avenue that you might have not thought of, and if so, that these are some of the steps that you would need to take. So then, like you said, Miles, so far as your science and your maths, and then start helping them plot some of this stuff out.
oh yeah. Yeah, now that's a good idea. I mean, having more, yeah, it was oftentimes, I was definitely the only black male in the room. We had a rescue team for the baby, and then you have the team that's for the mom. Oftentimes I definitely in the whole room would be, the only black person, definitely the only black male. If there's others in there, you definitely feel better. You know what I mean? Like you feel seen, and that's important. So yeah, that's definitely a good idea.
Okay.
Um,
So before we wrap up, and we want to share, we can go with Adam, keep going around. Is it your any information you want to give out if you want anybody to connect with you on the social media platforms or anything like that? Do you have any information you want to share that way? And then we go Adam, Chris, Mal, and then we'll wrap up.
on the socials, I really don't, I really don't, I'm not on there like that, but my email address is adamasmithrt@gmail.com. The RT obviously stands for a respiratory therapist, because that's what my credential is. So, any questions, I'm more than willing to help my community, navigate anything I can to help y'all. So reach out.
Thank you, brother Chris.
Yeah, so you can reach me, obviously, Chris Davis. My email address is chris@thelionheart.us. If you want to just shoot me a message, I mean, I try to make myself available. If you have a scenario you're navigating that you just want some insight or wisdom on, I'll be more than happy to share. So you can hit me up there. I'm on IG and Facebook. IG is _ the Lionheart 1 _ so you can hit me up there. Facebook is just Chris Davis. So there's a bunch of Chris
Yeah.
Davises, but if you see this handsome face, then you know you got the right one. Yeah.
And brother Mal.
Yeah, you can reach me at maldavis21@gmail.com. As far as social media, I really hate social media, but if you did want to connect with me on Instagram, it's the number 3. So third_lap_podcast. Definitely on there occasionally. But if you want something more immediate, definitely email me. Yeah, similar to Chris, if you have questions or if it's any way I can help, just let me know.
Yeah. And then mine's the same thing. I'm not big on the social media, so it would be my email, and it's my last name, Iszard, Iszard, the letter C for my first name, @gmail.com. And then also coming soon, I did start my own organization. I do have an LLC, and it's called Babies, Adults, and Youth, better known as BAY. And then that'll be coming out, and you'll have some information about that. But before we leave, I definitely want to make sure that I thank everyone for joining. And I want to thank all our panelists for being part of this conversation. It is so important, and the jewels that you shared are amazing. So we also want to make sure we ask and tell people you can follow us anywhere at Coco Life Black, and that's COO Life.Black. And then just join us. It's other information on there. Coco Black is around. Again, the Black Summit, Maternal Summit, will be this Saturday, March the 16th at Enon Church. It's a Expo. It's going to be a summit in the morning, the baby shower. There's a lot of resources, a lot of free items. It's food. We'll be there. It's a Dad's Den. So if you want to come in, you'll see me. I'll be at the Dad's Den. Dad's Den will be there. And we could chop it up. And again, we're talking about these policies, systems, and environment. Hey, let's try to make some of these environmental change, system changes. And the change starts with you. So it starts with us. So once again, thank you all. And y'all have a good night.
Yeah. Have a good night, guys. Thanks.
Good night.
Have a good one.